This is our podcast, episode 22. I'm the psych episode talk about the speech news in the UK to explore the stories and give their opinion. Local people, news of X are hardly someone's reported. So then this podcast is a low effort to try to address this balance. And the first story is the Tim's review of personal expense payments. The court of evidence has begun. This is the first full-scale evaluation of PEEP since introduction in 2013. The goal of it is to determine if the current assessment criteria reflects the reality in the modern world, including mental health and frustrating conditions. On the working pensions is inviting disabled people, carers and experts to share their experience. The consultations are open until May 28th, 2026. This is from the article, as far as recent data showing a 7% decline in new people awards compared to the post-pandemic peak. The number remained higher than 2019. I've talked about this before in terms of assessment criteria reflects the realities between the modern world. What we can understand that way? No. Especially when it comes to mental health and frustrating conditions. No responsibility so many different times. How the assessments are, well, in my opinion, ineffectual. And actually don't represent, to me, particularly work capability. It's like considering various working roles, someone like that. Yes, they do physical tests and such and so forth, but there's nothing that's actually focused on work, as far as I'm aware, in terms of test itself, in terms of various. So it's like they tried to do psychometry test and different variations of that. Obviously, that itself would rule out certain impairments, be it individual certain impairments would be able to engage in that at all. So that tells your story in itself. But I think that's what you'd have to do, because now, in interviews, a lot of interviews, various roles, they do have psychometry tests, even in jobs where you wouldn't simply think is needed. I know back in my student days, even going for a warehouse job, probably a job in a call centre, you'd have kind of basic psychometric tests, and even, group activities, a whole list of individual tests, and then assessments within a group and begin the scenarios and so forth. No, things happen all the time now. And before we get to the one-to-one interview, it's someone, and you probably have a whole day of these assessments, whether in a group or whether as individual tests, etc. and so forth. So that's what employers are doing. Then why would you, if you want to do something that's more realistic, that talks about people's capability for work, and why would you not implement some of that within employer capability tests? The reason for that is quite obvious. They tell that 90% of candidates would be able to do that, and because obviously they would be claiming the at-work benefits in the first place. So they know what they're doing. I mean, the basic tests, they do kind of rehabilitating your feeling ultimately. Those with history have the medical records back it up from by specialists. So I think, I don't really know what they expect to get from this, because the feedback that they'll get belongs to a clearly weighted to benefit strategies. And being in the build out, but I still think that people need to contribute, because ultimately we have a lot of democratic right to have a say in the process. So that's the only way things are going to change. Don't stand on the side, right? I'm not saying anything. Well, yeah, obviously reported back last year, I think some of there was a massive backlash sign that when it came to actual, DPOs coming to the table, the government to talk about welfare cuts, and they were on the first being announced that the severity of what I'm going to be. There was backlash saying that DPOs were making themselves from those talks. So I felt I listened to, and then also there's a pressure from individuals that thought that maybe the DPOs would be sending out if they were seen to be working with the government in any way. But I still think the only way you're going to change things, because even if the government is hell bent, and let's face it, whether it's Labour or Tories or Lib Dems, they're all kind of hell bent on this process. Interesting to see what the Greens, now that they seem to be coming to the forefront with their by-election wing, to see what they got to the table with in terms of benefit reform and how, whether it's just messaging and, any manifesto in the future says on that. But ultimately, the major parties are all the same thing, but I think as well, it's not just about have the influence on government necessarily. I think it's the wider picture of it, because ultimately there could be some things that are said and is taken, and those from further afield, maybe it's international DPLs, maybe it's other governments in other countries who look at that do have a more progressive approach to benefits. Maybe they look at something, maybe they start implementing a new system and take its those ideas and implement it somewhere else, and then later down the line, future government then looks in and says, look, let's revisit this, and maybe they have find a bit of a better, fairer system. And because I think, I don't know, people say we need change in how we do, but ultimately it's about the long game, and people say people don't have time to the long game. It's disabled if you've been playing the long game for forever. It's racing. It's about time. It's a community as a collective. And you have been playing the long game. So I think it's important to have a say, even though the future, the immediate future, does not bleak it. I think ultimately, when you take the current that we're in, whether it's unemployment increasing, the rise of AI, and how that will affect employment and the doom movers and everything else. And also the issues going on in the world, what impact that's going to have in terms of certain conflicts that are coming at the moment, and the immediate impact, long-term impact that's going to have on all world economies. There's got to be a major rethink, there's got to be a major reset globally, because ultimately, I don't know how it's sustainable. So I do think that ultimately the whole system's going to be ripped up at some point. I started. So, and at some point, some of these ideas, legal tag tanks, job Disney, I need to strategize. They have able to read the system. They couldn't know. People say it's not our job, but it's in our job. It's job. And success means having done it, and all. And PPLs do have that function of building pathways, strategic pathways in terms of how they would reach out to services in an ideal world. That's the reason why there's a policy drive. Yes, it's to kind of lobby government on behalf of disabled people, but ultimately it's also to try and act as like a mini kind of think tank in order to shape the future of this speech services. Yes, to have an influence, but to have a thinking of how they would, if they were, say for instance, they were government, how they would shape the future of policy. So this is the ultimate chance to try and do that. And as I say, it's certainly about having a direct influence. If you haven't had an influence in the here and now, it's about showing that there's another way of doing things. And eventually, someone will listen further down the line politically. It always happens. And, it's when it's viable to those in power, unfortunately. But I think now's the time to be in that vision for story for us on from I think it was the last podcast with put to the story about account visitation bans. I think it was the idea of the investigation involved into cases where families were restricted from seeing the prawns after raising concerns about the quality of care. Now, apparently, the care minister Stephen Kinnock announced a current crackdown saying that they might think about new legislation strengthen visiting rights, moving beyond the current guidance to ensure that contact restrictions cannot be used as a retaliatory measure. So there was some surprises by this story in previous knowledge of the case set. And if I'm opinion, the voice saying that parents seem to have a lot of power in order to say they, for every cheese on how they feel their loved one should be, the service they should receive. And I didn't actually know that care companies necessarily had the power to be visitation bans. It sets legislation, particularly care act, stipulates quite strongly the emphasises the right relationship, especially those relationships are key to the individual, and there has to be very strong reasons as to why. And any restriction on seeing a loved one is put in place, and indeed also the mental capacity to also strengthens that thinking as well in terms of the best interest is not having contact in the best interest of somebody if they can't act decision for themselves, and ultimately there has to be kind of strong evidence as to why that is in place. But and as well, it'd be interesting to see the evidence of these cases in terms of if they are banning orders, which they clearly are, otherwise it wouldn't be a new story. What they're conducted by Mr. Kinnock. You should see if there's any kind of legal and if this has been taken to court. So to see the court transcripts, because there'd have to be some strong evidence of wrongdoing in terms of a ban, in terms of holding this up in the first place, and ultimately one would have thought it would have to go for can't be just the care on banning somebody without running it past social services, potentially even, very sensitive from the court protection in terms of inquiry if the person has capacity, etc. So forth, because of that legal need for the individual to have that relationship outside of the care or caring more, because it's really important to do so, especially as that would have a detrimental effect on the individual, quite trauma and distress, and could lead to damaging them and also the placement because of the distress, and how that distress would come across a baby, especially potentially carers of concern, etc., because of the loss of that relationship. So I think, very interesting to see more of that and see more of the evidence of what these were used. So yes, there's retaliatory measures, but again, where's the evidence of that spell? And let's see, it'd be interesting if it was going in court, see what evidence is, because to all my knowledge, there are very strong reasons to to stop that contact. And so I'll let see further about that. Would have thought that would have been safeguardings put in place as well before such drastic measures were taken, which would mean social services would effectively investigate any claims that regarding harmful actions that would necessitate a banning order. So we await further news in that story, because I don't think I think we need more flesh on the bones of that one, really. And the first stories that DWP's confirmed target to increase in-person assessments to 30% of all reviews starting this month into April. While many clients prefer telephone and video assessments, the department argues that face-to-face appointments for American conservations for complex mobility and functional cases. Logically, there's an argument. I think also, though, however, if the gender is obviously, and we know that it's gendered, it's been known since the Atos days, then it is far easier to kind of like those points following a face-to-face appointment, because you don't see a lot more situations have to number by number. A day when you used to support people to go to assessments, we sent to the bigger one. The security would stand outside and be watching people car park, which was fearing the yards about. You're watching people walk all the way up or wheel up or wherever it might be, and to a certain extent I think they could see people collect cars and stuff, whatever, and so they get a full picture of people even coming into the centre. So I think it's less non-verbal cues that they potentially glean from that to form a picture before the assessment even begins, in a way, and a lot of times about feedback and involves so-called evidence of who's that only involve the start of the assessment, things such as that, which dimension, behaviour in the ways you've been, etc. and so forth. Okay, so they're not eligible or whatever. So I think it's all that picture they kind of used to as part of the assessment as well. So I think some of it's part of that. I get that in terms of complex functioning cases, but ultimately, as I've said many times before, a lot of these cases that are complex, the clues in the name is complex, and ultimately it's a serious condition, and that person would have had more often, not always, but they'll have comprehensive medical history, and I've seen specialists over the years. I think that ultimately this is just a word salad, really. I think it's a way of kind of putting more pressure on people to be face to face and playing more anxiety. I think was just lead to more cuts, because that's what they want, effectively. Because there will be people that don't turn up to these assessments because of the complex book shock about the nature of these appointments. Because sure, I'm having a bad day. It's difficult to enough to telephone assessment, video assessment, let alone get out to these assessments. So I think a lot of people will cancel. Think about things like ME or whatever, or things like fluctuate, you have flare-ups and whatever. If it's on the day and you cancel, well, it's a perfect safe to call you benefits. I think it's all of that as well. Everyone plays the game, they know the game they're playing. As much as they choose, several people playing a game. And doubt. They know how to kind of scary these scenarios as well. So yeah, it's my views on that. And that's it. Let's listen back.